Welcome to UAN Payroll 101. This video series has been developed by UAN as an introduction to payroll concepts prior to going through the new user payroll training. The videos will familiarize you with common payroll terms and concepts that you will encounter processing payroll for your entity. Let's get started. Why are we doing this course? I don't know about you, but when I first began my 15 years as a fiscal officer, I had never processed a payroll before. And of course, my first week working was a payroll week. I was thrown in and expected to have payroll processed on time, withholdings paid to correct agencies, and reports completed and filed with something called public retirement agencies. It was all very overwhelming to me, and I was afraid that I might do something wrong. We here at UAN wanted to create this payroll course so that you would not feel overwhelmed or be afraid that you might do something wrong when you process your first payroll. Payroll is, as you will find out from the employees of the entity, very important. Employees will quickly come and let you know if there is something wrong with their pay. Payroll is not only important, it's very intricate and always changing. Some government entities have complex earning schedules that include earnings such as hourly, salary, sick leave, overtime, double overtime, holiday leave worked, officer in charge pay, and shift differential pay. Phew, that's a lot. Federal and state legislatures pass laws during the year that affect payroll, or the IRS may change its interpretation of tax law that affects employee tax withholdings. And on top of all of that, Ohio law holds that fiscal officers personally are responsible to correctly pay employees, withhold proper taxes, and submit withholding payments and reports on time to the correct agencies. What will you learn in this course? We will begin with the basics on employees, earnings and leaves, and withholdings. We will discuss how you, as a fiscal officer, need to be informed by staying up on any legislative changes by your board, the state, and federal governments that could affect payroll. Then we will get into some complicated concepts, such as employer pickup programs, the Family Medical Leave Act, unemployment compensation, and how withholdings are calculated. Next, we will cover withholding payments, what reporting or documentation must be filed with the payments, and required quarterly reporting. And finally, we will end with required annual reporting for payroll. As you can see, processing payroll can be difficult. Payroll 101 will help give you a good foundation of payroll so that you can approach your first payroll or your 100th payroll with confidence. This course is not an exhaustive study on payroll topics, and UAN support only answers questions about the software. But it will help get you on your way. Employees. Who are they? Well, the Ohio Revised Code defines an employee as any person holding a position subject to appointment, removal, promotion, or reduction by an appointing officer. The IRS defines an employee as anyone who performs services that the entity has a right to control what will be done and how it will be done. This is true even when the entity gives a lot of freedom in how the employee does their jobs. What matters is the entity has the right to control the details of how the services are performed. It does not matter whether the individual is full-time or part-time. Earnings and leaves. An earning is a type of employee compensation. The IRS says that compensation includes any property or services provided in exchange for an employee's services. This includes all cash and non-cash payments. If employee services are paid in a way other than cash, the fair market value provided in payment is included in total yearly wages for the employee. All earnings for employees must have board authorization through legislation for pay rates. Earnings and leave types. In the Uniform Accounting Network, or UAN, there are 10 preset earning types. Salary, a fixed compensation paid to a person for regular work or services. Hourly, compensation paid to a person by the hour. Overtime is payment for working time before or after scheduled hours. Per item is compensation for individual items. For example, payment per meeting, per zoning permit, or per inspection. Leave and compensatory time. Payments for board-adopted leaves such as sick, vacation, personal, and holiday, and paid time off instead of overtime pay. Another type is other taxable income. This is types of compensation paid to an employee other than what we've already discussed that the IRS has determined is taxable and is also included for calculation of retirement contribution amounts. Non-taxable income. Types of compensation paid to an employee other than what we've already discussed that the IRS has determined is non-taxable and is also included in calculation of retirement contribution amount. Non-retirement income. Types of compensation paid to an employee other than what we've already discussed that the IRS has determined is taxable but is not included for calculation of retirement contribution amounts. Non-tax, non-retirement. So types of compensation paid to an employee other than what we've already discussed that the IRS has determined is non-taxable and not included for calculation of retirement contribution amounts. Non-cash benefits is a benefit an employee receives that is not cash but must be included in taxable income. The amount is not included for retirement contribution calculation. Be sure that there are board-approved policies for all forms of non-cash benefits. Minimum wage. The Fair Labor Standards Act establishes minimum wage, overtime pay, and record keeping affecting full-time and part-time workers in the private sector and in federal, state, and local governments. The Federal Act requires employers of non-tipped employees to pay a minimum wage of $7.25 per hour, effective since July 24, 2009. The state of Ohio's minimum wage rate for 2015 for non-tipped employees is $8.10 per hour. Since the state minimum wage is higher than the federal minimum wage rate, all employers in Ohio must pay at the state minimum wage rate of $8.10 per hour. The minimum wage rate is something that you would need to remain informed about. in case there are any increases to the minimum wage rate. There's more information on requirements for minimum wage in the Payroll 101 document. Overtime eligibility. Which employees does the entity have to pay overtime wages to, and at what rate? Employees are classified for overtime eligibility as exempt or non-exempt. Exempt employees are those employees that the entity is not required to pay overtime. Some examples of exempt employees are professional employees and outside sales employees. For non-exempt employees, the Federal Fair Labor Act requires overtime pay at a rate of not less than 1.5 times an employee's regular rate of pay after 40 hours of work in a work week. The state of Ohio's overtime rate is the same. Refer to the Fair Labor Standard Act on the United States Department of Labor website and the entity's legal counsel when determining if an employee is exempt from overtime pay. Withholdings. A withholding is a portion of money held back from an employee's earnings to cover taxes, retirement, or other financial obligations and commitments. In the Uniform Accounting Network, UAN, there are 9 preset withholding types. Federal income tax, Ohio income tax, federal supplemental income tax. This is an amount withheld in addition to the calculated income tax and is employee requested. Ohio supplemental income. This also is an amount withheld in addition to calculated income tax and is employee requested. Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, or OPERS. This is a retirement withholding. Another withholding type is Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund, or OP&FPF, a retirement withholding. Medicare, Social Security, and Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. This is for unemployment. Additional withholding types can be created in UAN with 5 reusable withholding groups. Cafeteria plan. This is a board-approved plan for pre-tax withholdings. Deferred compensation is an approved plan for pre-tax retirement deductions. Under this plan, taxes are deferred until the employee begins collecting on retirement. Local tax is a levied municipal income tax. School district income tax is also a levied tax by the school district where the employee lives. Miscellaneous withholdings. Some examples are child support, garnishment, and union dues. Multiple withholdings may be added using any of the 5 reusable withholdings. For example, an entity may have several employees that live in different school districts. Therefore, the fiscal officer would need to set up several school district income tax withholdings that represent each different school district. By doing this, each school district's deductions are reported separately and are reported properly with the school district number on each employee's W-2. If the fiscal officer only set up one school district withholding, each month they would have to manually figure each different school district's withholding amount for reporting to the state of Ohio and would have to edit each employee's W-2 at the end of the year. No fun. How are employees paid? Employees are paid by warrant, check, or through direct deposit. Direct deposit is electronic funds transferred directly into the employee's primary checking account. Government entities may pay its employees by direct deposit, providing the board authorizes such automatic payments by legislation. But it may not be utilized unless there is in place board-approved appropriations for those expenditures, and the bank used to process the direct deposits must be an eligible institution per Ohio Revised Code. Some limitations on payrolls. Each entity may make expenditures for the payment of current payrolls by the authority of board-approved appropriations. The total expenditures for payroll during the first half of the fiscal year may not exceed 60% of the total year's appropriations, unless the board, by 3/4 vote of all members, waives such limitations. Be informed. A fiscal officer who is well-read, informed on changes to payroll law, and who attends multiple training opportunities each year is a fiscal officer that will experience less frustration and face less payroll problems than one that does not do these things. I not only attended multiple trainings each year by many different agencies, I also signed up to receive newsletters and updates from the IRS and national payroll groups. The more you know, the easier your payroll will be. So, read up on federal, state, and local legislation and policies that affect payroll, like payroll rates, benefits offered by the entity, leaves offered, overtime, and union contracts. Review employee files to learn about each employee. What is their pay rate? What benefits have they chosen? Is all documentation required in the employee's file? This is a good way to get yourself familiarized with the entity's payroll. Read publications. Read them from the IRS. Read employer manuals from OPERS and OP&F, insurance manuals, and court documents for child support or garnishments. Know all of the types of earnings offered by the entity. Know all leave types and policies associated with each leave, and know all available withholding types. Passed during the 130th General Assembly and enacted on March 23, 2015, the Fiscal Integrity Act raises the bar of accountability for fiscal officers across the state. Newly elected or appointed fiscal officers must complete 6 hours of initial education courses before commencing their term or within the first year in office, and an additional 18 hours of continuing education courses before the end of their first term in office. Re-elected fiscal officers must complete 12 hours of continuing education courses before the end of each term, including 2 hours of ethics training. Fiscal officers that fall under these requirements include city auditors, city treasurers, township fiscal officers, village fiscal officers, village clerk treasurers, village clerks, and in the case of a municipality with a charter, whomever the charter designates with the duties of these offices. Well, here we are at the end of Level 1. In this level, we discussed who employees are and how they're paid, different types of earnings and leaves, different types of withholdings, and how to be an informed fiscal officer. This completes Level 1 of Payroll 101. Thank you.